To your point about the new way of working, we don't have a clear end state. And so to Douglas's point, which is really what we're dealing with, is transformational change. It's not as clear when you're trying to do change management in this environment exactly what the end state is. So as a result, transformational change becomes more ambiguous, and it becomes more difficult as a knowledge management leader to explain where we are now and where we need to go. And so organizational learning and trying to explain organizational learning when you're not necessarily getting the kind of buy-in you're looking for instance, a significant percentage of our organization are auditors. I mean, need I say more? You know, the point is that just to try and get them to say the words organizational learning, let alone understand transformational change, a new way of working, and what exactly that means. And from you coming from an engineering perspective, I mean, I'm sure you also feel some of that. You want it to be clean. You want it to have structure. And some of this is just a little bit messy.
Absolutely. But see, coming from an engineering perspective, I think that if you start in the front end and you design it properly.
But where is the front end?
Systems engineering always started at the top with the total system and decomposing it down.
The world is not a machine.
Right.
And the world doesn't have to be a machine. That's why we have certain people with certain competencies. You don't expect everybody to do it, and or to be able to do those type of things. The world is about integration.
Well, let me give you an example.
The proper people in the proper
Wait.
Let me stop.
Just one example, though, from a practical point of view.
Got a learning moment.
Okay, give the man a microphone. Give the man a microphone.
One of the competencies that I put up
Sir?
was organizational engineering, and that is an interesting discipline because it helps to identify which of the 4 strategies you have selected to take in information, how you're going to process it, and what you're going to do with it. And a lot about what I hear people talking about, there are a lot of engineers that are very process-oriented. I'm an engineer, and I am not. My preference is not to do that. My preference is to be very ambiguous, have a lot of ambiguity. That's a word I can pronounce.
Let's all say it together.
Ambiguity. It's a tough word.
Again.
So part of this is that we're not aware of our preferences, and we've got people in positions who prefer process, and we've asked them to do something ambiguous.
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 Thank you. Or vice versa. The other thing about change, the resistance to change is not the change itself, it's the stress that we put on ourselves because we don't know the outcome or the impact on myself. So one of the ways that you lead a person into change is to take them to the new state. And through role playing, they realize they can perform. So your librarian could have performed, but she was not so much rejecting the new job, she didn't understand if she could do the new job. And without knowing that, she's going to stay in her comfort zone. And if she's one of those persons who is process-oriented, she's locked into a process and very content with that. Now you're asking her to do 3 or 4 things, which is really not quite fair if you're aware of all of these other processes.
But you have to show her from where she's going. And I agree with you because I like activity-based because that's how people work. And that's part of the process. You can come in, and I agree with you, but I'm not totally process-oriented. That's what organizations are, but you can flip it.
But if all of us took the survey and I ran the analysis, I could tell each of us what our preferences are, and you'd all be surprised how different that all of us are. And that if we understood those differences, we could leverage that and we could all work together very quickly. And we use it as a tool to get people to work together very quickly. The other thing, since I've got the mic and the floor, and I'll do this real quick, Linda said something that was like an alert to me, and so did Denise. She was pretty adamant about it, and it just kind of went away. I think we
I was adamant? Are you sure?
Yeah. Yeah, I could tell the difference. There's multiple levels from 1 to 10. This was probably an 8. This idea of a change, the way we're going to, the world is changing with the way they're working. And I said earlier about teaching people to fish rather than handing them the fish. So in my business, I don't talk about knowledge management, I talk about knowledge awareness. I believe all companies are knowledge-based already, they just aren't aware of it, and their knowledge may not be relevant, it may not be shared, and yada yada. I got a whole list of verbs I use. And then the other part is how to get the company to learn. And kind of a segue into this universal knowledge worker, all the employees that we've been talking about. I think the KM specialist job changes if we accept that we're really going to teach people to fish. Because I don't write down other people's knowledge. I teach them how to write down their own knowledge. Now I teach a course, Carla participates in that. We have a client and they do that. And when I was at General Motors, I had 250 experts and I had to have it all done in 6 months. Well, I can't follow 250 people around and figure out everything they know, but I can teach 250 people how to write down what they know. And that's
Why are you focusing on what they write down, what they know? Can you say more about why you're focusing on that?
I guess because 80% of engineering is repetitive, and there's some fundamentals in physics. If we capture that about what makes a product work, we don't need to rediscover that every single day and rework.
Amen.
And that frees up all of the people that want to do new work and new ideas and be innovative to go do those things, and the company can make a lot of money because we're making these things and they work. And, yeah. So my question, and then like a sense check I need is, are we going down the path of this KM specialist and their competencies is to do all of whatever we think KM is, or are we trying to make the workers, the employees, people who use knowledge, aware of knowledge and its asset and its value? Because I think it changes the way we work on it. In fact, we may be already too late. If I'm a savvy CEO and I know about Columbia's courses, I'm sending all my managers through a refresher course. I don't need a knowledge specialist on the floor. I'm going to get my whole, because what I want is all my employees to be aware of knowledge and to manage it like an asset. I really don't need a CKO. And I don't need 20 or a whole department full of knowledge managers. But I do need a whole bunch of people that are aware of what knowledge is.
I just want to say something though.
You don't agree with that?
One of the things about this forum, okay, is that one of the goals was that we wanted to find common ground. And one of the things that I think we in the KM community often, the trap we often fall into is this is the right way, this is the right way. And I think we need to step back what Annie was trying to get us to do a little while ago, because I think we're kind of going down that this is the right way or this is not the right way, and go broad rather than narrow. So if we can go back to the higher level competencies, I just think that we need to be inclusive and broad and look first at everything that needs to be in there before we start narrowing.
I'd like to say something about the KM specialist role, which in all honesty, I don't think it's cemented in yet or not, but going through several initiatives and trying to identify the key people that you need. I just want to throw an idea, and again, it's an idea, and I'm not saying that it's right or wrong, because it couldn't be. But when I look at KM specialists and I start to look for someone to fill a position, the positions that I found that I needed were like, I call them a solutions architect. But then I qualified and I said a solutions architect, but they have to be a content manager and they have to have certain skills, okay? Then I have a solutions architect, and this person must be a interface type of builder on the front end, because I found that I need someone to work that front end so that it looks really good for the user, but I also need someone to organize that back end so that they can find that data. Now, once I get those into place, the other roles that I have, and all of these are kind of like servant roles, so we do it like as a service, so to speak. I have like a director of COPs, because there are two types of COPs. We have the formal ones, and we have the interest ones, and then we also have just the workspace where people come together. So I need someone who can keep those sustaining. Now, where I cross over at is that that person is specialized in those COPs, but in order for them to work within the organization, the COPs have a client champion that's there, and then they have roles within it that accommodate those particular COPs. So it's not that they actually perform that work, because that's when you get into the business aligned type of areas. But on the front end, we do have those specialists that come there, and that's what they specialize in, and that's what I expect for them to contribute and to come together and talk about. And so then there are other areas like portal specialists, you know. So that's what I think, and this is just my view of where I think the specialization comes in at, because I tell you, it's very hard finding people to fill those positions and to get that work done. And I have to clearly identify the requirements or the competencies that they need in order to step in and be able to design a back end using a taxonomy, think about ontologies, and lay it out, deal with the customer, and then come back and say, I have designed a workspace, or I have designed a back end for you that you can intuitively go to, type in a word, and get all of those documents that you need that are lessons learned, best practices, profiles, and also, what's the third thing? They got documents. And they can see all of that in the same view. That, to me, is actually, those are skills and competencies that they need. They also need knowledge. Like for the COP director, they need to understand what a COP is. But then they also need to know how to put it into place. So not negating any of that, but I do think in these teams, and I don't know if anybody else has struggled with it, but I have struggled with finding KM professionals who have specialty areas that can actually execute on these projects that I run. Okay. Any person?
Yeah, my problem with that approach is that we can never be able to teach someone everything they deal with as a knowledge managers or knowledge professionals, because if we teach them how to do programming or how to set up systems or how to, there's endless things that it goes on that, in my opinion, knowledge professional is not the person who do things by their hands, but rather the people who kind of the higher level where I need to do something, I go and hire someone. I walk to the CEO at the company or my immediate manager and say, I need someone who knows Java, I need to develop this application. You hire that person to do the application for you. You don't actually sit down, because if you sit down to do the Java programming, you have nothing else, you have no time to do anything else. So you really need the time as a facilitator, as someone who coordinates, and someone who has the big vision, who see the big picture, kind of see the forest beyond the trees, not just the trees.
What do you call the Java person? Do they not have a specialty?
It's a programmer. Java is a programmer, but it's not a knowledge professional.
Actually, I disagree.
Yeah.
I disagree. Sorry. I think this person used to be called a programmer. They're now called a digital scientist, and they're called the knowledge architect. The person who we used to hire to do the portal, okay, maybe only knew how to program in Java, and they did a very bad job of developing an application because they didn't understand the whole environment. So what we contribute from the knowledge management perspective is what does this whole environment look like, the whole knowledge environment. So they still learn the Java programming, but they learn it over in the computer science department, or the digital sciences, but they take the knowledge management courses to learn basically how to design that whole environment.
But just to second his point for a second, because I think that what his point was a lot of times when you're understaffed and you're in knowledge management and you have business problems and you seem like a resource that can be used, you can get sucked into executing, solving the business problem and get pulled down, so you have no time except to do whatever it is that this particular knowledge management project is. And you've got to stay up above the fray and look at ways to leverage other resources. If you can hire, great. If not, I have people that sign up to volunteer, and I got a code that they can bill against. It's not a utilized code, but it's a way to get young people opportunities to work on knowledge management projects in the nights and on the weekends, which they're looking to do to stand out in our type of high performance environment.